Jesus tells the parable of the Good Samaritan, Luke 10 verses 25 to 37. The story of the Good Samaritan is one of those timeless parables that never fails to challenge us, regardless of where we are in life. It's a story we all know, but one that has the power to shake us to the core every time we hear it. In Luke 10 verses 25 to 37, Jesus doesn't just tell a story. He paints a picture of what it means to love truly, deeply, and without boundaries. But before we dive into the heart of this parable, let's stop and reflect on a question that Jesus presents to all of us. Who is my neighbor? It's a question that has echoed throughout centuries. One that we, too, must ask ourselves every day. As we go about our busy lives, surrounded by people from all walks of life, we might think we have the answer to this question. But Jesus flips the script. He doesn't just want us to love those who are easy to love, or those who love us back. He challenges us to love those we least expect, to show compassion even to those who might be seen as enemies or outcasts. So, what does this parable teach us? What can we learn from the actions of a man who wasn't supposed to help, but did anyway? Jesus, in his infinite wisdom, uses the story of a Samaritan, someone considered an outsider by the Jews at the time, to show us what true mercy looks like. The Samaritan is the unexpected hero, someone who sees the need, feels compassion, and takes action without any thought for personal gain. We live in a world that can sometimes feel divided. People are often quick to judge others based on differences in culture, race, status, or belief. The walls that separate us seem high, and it can be easy to turn a blind eye to the suffering of those who are different from us. But Jesus calls us to something greater. He calls us to tear down those walls, to see others through his eyes, and to act with the same love and mercy that he shows us. This isn't just about being kind or helping someone when it's convenient. It's about radically rethinking how we interact with the world. It's about choosing to be like the Samaritan, who could have easily walked away but chose instead to show compassion, even at a great cost. This parable challenges us to reflect on how we live our lives, how we treat those around us, and whether we are truly living out the love of Christ in our actions. As we walk through this story together, I invite you to look at your own life. Who are the people around you that God is calling you to love? What are the opportunities you have to show mercy, to be a neighbor to someone in need? Jesus doesn't just call us to listen to these words. He calls us to live them. And as we dive deeper into the parable of the Good Samaritan, let's open our hearts and minds to what it truly means to love our neighbors as ourselves. Because the answer to Jesus' question, who is your neighbor, might be different than you think. And the call to action is clear: go and do likewise. Part 1. The lawyer's question. Seeking justification for his actions. Now, let's look at the opening of this parable where it all begins, when a lawyer approaches Jesus with a question. But this isn't just any question. It's one that cuts to the heart of how we often approach God and his commands. The lawyer, a person well-versed in the law and in religious matters, asks Jesus, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" At first glance, this seems like a straightforward question, one that many of us might ask. But if we dig a little deeper, we realize that the lawyer's question isn't just about seeking knowledge. It's about seeking justification for his own actions. Think about this for a moment. The lawyer isn't just curious about what it takes to receive eternal life. He's trying to figure out the bare minimum that he needs to do to get there. He wants a formula, a checklist, something that will clear his conscience without asking too much of him. This question reveals a lot about how we, too, often approach God's commands. We want to know what's required of us, but often, we don't want to hear about the deeper transformation that comes with truly loving others. Jesus, as always, responds with wisdom. Rather than answering the lawyer directly, he turns the question back on him. Jesus asks, "What is written in the law? How do you read it? Jesus doesn't give a simple answer because he wants the lawyer and all of us to reflect on what the law truly means. He wants to challenge our understanding and our motives. The lawyer, likely expecting a simple, quick answer, responds with the familiar commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. These commandments weren't new to him. They were well known in Jewish law. But notice the simplicity and depth of what the lawyer says. These commandments summarize the entire law: love God and love others. But here's the thing. The lawyer doesn't fully grasp the weight of what he's saying. He's reciting it from memory, but it's clear he hasn't fully understood the radical implications of these words. Jesus affirms the lawyer's answer, but, as we'll see, this question isn't about merely agreeing with the right answer. Jesus then pushes further, asking the lawyer to consider what it means to truly love your neighbor. And this, of course, leads to the lawyer's next question. And who is my neighbor? This is where it gets interesting. The lawyer, in seeking to justify himself, is trying to narrow the scope of what it means to love his neighbor. He's asking for a definition. Who exactly falls into this category of neighbor? He wants to know the limits of his responsibility. Is a neighbor someone who looks like him, thinks like him, believes like him? Can he love a select few and still fulfill this command? This is the trap that we too often fall into. We want to define who is worthy of our love and mercy. We want to create boundaries, set limits, and find excuses for why we don't have to extend love to certain people. The lawyer's question isn't just an inquiry about who his neighbor is. It's a question about how much love he is willing to give, and whether he can get away with giving just enough. But Jesus doesn't let him off the hook. Instead of narrowing down the definition, he expands it in a way that no one could have anticipated. And this is where the parable begins to challenge us deeply. Jesus isn't just asking us to love those who are easy to love, those who are convenient or similar to us. He's calling us to love those who might be difficult, those who may not deserve our love in the world's eyes, and those whom society has cast aside. So, as we reflect on the lawyer's question, let's think about our own lives. How often do we try to justify our actions in the same way? How often do we look for loopholes in God's commands, trying to minimize our responsibility to love others? And how often do we, like the lawyer, ask, "Who is my neighbor?" Because we're hoping to define the limits of our love. But Jesus isn't calling us to find boundaries for our love. He's calling us to love without limits. And in the next part of the parable, he's going to show us exactly what that looks like. Part 2. The setting of the parable, the road to Jericho. Now, let's dive into the setting of this parable, the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. It's not just a backdrop for the story. It's a crucial element that adds depth and meaning to the entire parable. Imagine this. A man traveling from Jerusalem, the holy city, to Jericho, a bustling city located in the Jordan Valley. This wasn't a smooth, safe journey by any means. The road from Jerusalem to Jericho was notoriously dangerous. It was narrow, winding, and lined with caves and crags where robbers often hid, waiting to ambush unsuspecting travelers. The terrain was harsh, and the distance was about 17 miles, with a steep descent from Jerusalem, which sits at a high elevation, down to Jericho. This setting is significant because it reflects the vulnerability of the man in the story. We're not talking about a leisurely stroll through a well-paved, peaceful path. This is a treacherous road, where danger lurks around every corner. The man in the parable is already at risk just by being on that road. And it's on this road that he encounters trouble. He's attacked by robbers, stripped of his clothes, beaten, and left half dead by the side of the road. The scene Jesus paints is vivid and harrowing. But here's where we need to pause and think about what this road represents in our own lives. The road to Jericho isn't just a literal place. It can be seen as a metaphor for the journeys we all face in life. Think about the paths we walk every day, physically, emotionally, spiritually. They can be just as dangerous and full of obstacles as the road to Jericho. The world we live in can sometimes feel like a harsh road, full of hardships, challenges, and dangers. There are moments when we, too, are left beaten and broken, struggling to make our way through life. And like the man in the parable, we often find ourselves in desperate need of help. Jesus is setting up this scene not just to tell a story, but to help us reflect on the vulnerable places in our own lives, the places where we're most at risk. How many times have we found ourselves on that road in life, hurt and broken, unsure of where to turn? The road to Jericho is a powerful image because it speaks to the real struggles that we all face, whether they're physical, emotional, or spiritual. We can all relate to being in a place of need, a place where we feel alone and abandoned. But the beauty of this parable is that it doesn't end with the man lying helpless by the side of the road. The story continues, and what happens next is where the message of hope begins to unfold. It's on this dangerous, desolate road that the question of mercy becomes real. The man's plight is not just a theoretical scenario. It's a reality that we all face in different ways. And as we'll see, it's not about who the man is or why he ended up in this situation, but about what happens next. Who will stop to help? So as you think about this road, consider your own journey. What are the roads you walk each day? Where do you encounter danger, loneliness, or fear? Where do you find yourself in need of mercy, in need of someone to stop and help? The man in the parable, though beaten and broken, is about to encounter something that will change everything for him. A message of mercy, of love, and of compassion that transcends all boundaries. This is where the story takes a powerful turn. The road to Jericho isn't just a path of suffering. It's also the place where mercy is shown in unexpected ways. So, as we continue, let's pay close attention to what happens next on this dangerous road. It's here that we'll see who steps up to show mercy and who chooses to walk on by. And this is where the challenge begins for us, too. When we encounter suffering in others, how do we respond? The road to Jericho asks us to consider our own reactions and choices in the face of someone else's pain. Part 3. The priest and the Levite, religious duty without compassion. As we continue along this journey, we encounter two characters who, at first glance, seem like the very people you would expect to stop and help. These are the ones who, in a way, should know better, at least from a religious perspective. Jesus introduces us to the priest and the Levite, two figures who represent religious authority and duty. So, what do they do when they see a man lying in desperate need of help on the road? The priest, someone whose job it is to serve in the temple and uphold the law, walks right past the wounded man. The Levite, another religious figure who assists in temple duties, does the same. Both see the man, both know he's in trouble, but neither offers a helping hand. Now, I want you to pause and really think about this. Why would they pass by? Why would they ignore the suffering right in front of them? Especially when they were supposed to be the ones who cared for the hurting, the broken, and the needy. The priest and the Levite were both men of faith. They were entrusted with religious duties, and by all accounts, they were people who should have known what the law of love required. After all, the law clearly stated to love your neighbor as yourself. But instead of living out that command, they choose to walk by. And that's where the discomfort begins for us. This part of the parable is incredibly convicting because it shows us how easy it can be to fall into a trap of religious duty without truly living out the heart of the law. Think about it. They both see the man in need. They both are well aware of the suffering taking place before them. And yet, they both decide that the cost of helping is too great. Maybe they were in a hurry. Maybe they didn't want to risk becoming ceremonially unclean by touching someone who was hurt. Or maybe they simply didn't want to get involved. Whatever their reasons, they let fear, self-interest, or religious routine dictate their actions. We can easily fall into the same trap today, can't we? It's so easy to let our religious duties, our routines, and our schedules become an excuse for not engaging with the pain and suffering around us. We might attend church on Sundays, pray before meals, or check off all the boxes that make us feel like good Christians. But when it comes to stepping out and showing real, sacrificial love to those in need, do we walk by like the priest and the Levite? This part of the story challenges us to look inward. How often do we ignore the suffering right in front of us, simply because we're too busy or too comfortable? How often do we choose our own convenience over the call to love our neighbors? It's a difficult question, but it's one we need to wrestle with if we are to truly follow Jesus. What's even more troubling is that the priest and the Levite didn't just ignore the wounded man. They did so in the name of religious duty. They probably justified their actions by thinking, "I have important work to do. I can't stop now." It's almost as though they were using their religious roles as a shield to avoid engaging with the messiness of life. But Jesus doesn't let us off the hook that easily. He's showing us that true faith isn't about performing religious rituals or maintaining a spotless image. It's about showing love and mercy when it matters most. And this brings us to a stark reality. It's not enough to just talk about love or to say we follow God's commands. We must live them out in real, tangible ways. The priest and the Levite missed an opportunity to embody God's love because they were too wrapped up in their own religious routines to care about the suffering right in front of them. They let their religious identity become a barrier to mercy rather than a vehicle for it. So, as you reflect on this part of the parable, I want to ask you, are we ever like the priest or the Levite? Do we ever allow our religious duties, our own comfort, or our busyness to get in the way of showing love to those in need? Jesus isn't just calling us to follow rules. He's calling us to show love and mercy, no matter the cost. The real question is, when we see suffering, are we ready to step in and make a difference? Or do we simply pass by? In the next part of the parable, we'll meet a character who responds in a completely different way. One that challenges us to go beyond our comfort zones and live out love in action. But for now, let's take a moment to reflect on our own responses to the world's pain. Are we ready to choose mercy over routine? To choose love over indifference? That's the challenge Jesus sets before us. Part 4. The Samaritan, a radical act of mercy. Now, we come to the unexpected hero of the story, the Samaritan. If you've been following along, you know that Jesus has already painted a very clear picture of what happens when the people who should help, like the priest and the Levite, walk on by. But just when you think the story is over, Jesus introduces someone who completely flips the script, someone whose actions take us by surprise. And this is where the power of the parable really hits home. Remember, the Samaritan was not just a stranger to the wounded man on the road. He was from a group that was despised by Jews at the time. Jews and Samaritans had a long history of animosity. They were cultural and religious rivals, and the divide between them was deep. If anyone was considered an outsider, a person to be avoided, it was a Samaritan. So, when Jesus makes the Samaritan the hero of the story, he's doing something radical. He's showing us that mercy and love aren't confined to the people we like, the ones we agree with, or the ones who look like us. They are for everyone, even those we would never expect. Let's really sit with that for a moment. The Samaritan wasn't just someone from a different community. He was someone who, in the eyes of the man on the side of the road, should have been the enemy. And yet, when the Samaritan sees the man in need, he doesn't hesitate. He doesn't cross to the other side of the road. He doesn't look the other way. Instead, he stops. He sees the man, he feels compassion for him, and he acts. What does the Samaritan do? First, he approaches the wounded man and tends to his immediate needs. He bandages his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. symbols of healing and care. Then, he places the man on his own donkey, takes him to an inn, and ensures that he's cared for. But it doesn't stop there. The Samaritan promises the innkeeper that he will cover any additional expenses when he returns. He goes above and beyond, showing mercy not just with his words but with his time, his resources, and his heart. He gives everything he has, not because he's expected to, but because he has compassion. Now, think about what that act of mercy really means. The Samaritan didn't stop just because it was convenient. He didn't stop because he was seeking recognition or a reward. In fact, the story doesn't even tell us if the wounded man was grateful. The Samaritan stopped simply because he saw a human being in need, and he couldn't walk away. This is what true mercy looks like. It's not conditional. It's not based on whether the person deserves it or whether they'll ever be able to repay you. Mercy is about seeing the value of another person, regardless of who they are or where they come from, and responding with love and action. This is where Jesus challenges us deeply. How often do we show mercy only when it's easy, when it's convenient, or when it's with people we already like? Jesus is showing us that true mercy goes beyond these boundaries, crosses divides. It sees the humanity in others, even in those we might otherwise avoid. The Samaritan's compassion is a radical act of mercy because it doesn't conform to the norms of the world. It's not about what's expected or what's safe. It's about loving others as God loves us. What makes this even more radical is that the Samaritan doesn't just offer superficial help. He doesn't just toss a few coins and walk away. He enters into the man's suffering. He gets his hands dirty. He risks his own safety, his own comfort, and his own time. He doesn't know the man, and the man certainly isn't a member of his tribe or community. But none of that matters. The Samaritan shows mercy because he sees someone in need, and that need is more important than anything else in that moment. So, what does this mean for us today? It means that we are called to show mercy, not just to those who are easy to love, but to those who challenge us, those who might not think like us or believe like us. We are called to be like the Samaritan, to step out of our comfort zones and show mercy to those who need it most, even if it costs us something. It's easy to help when it's convenient, when it feels good, but Jesus calls us to love in the hardest of circumstances. The Samaritan's actions are an example of love that costs us something. Our time, our resources, and sometimes our reputation. As you reflect on this part of the story, I want you to ask yourself, how am I showing mercy in my life? Are there people I've been avoiding, people I've been too quick to judge or dismiss, who are in need of compassion? And more importantly, am I willing to step out, to be uncomfortable, and to offer mercy in ways that reflect the radical love Jesus calls us to? The Samaritan's example is not just a nice story. It's a call to action. It's a challenge to live out the love and mercy of Christ in every area of our lives. And it's a reminder that when we show mercy, we are reflecting the heart of God in a world that desperately needs it. So, let's ask ourselves, are we ready to be the Samaritan in someone else's story? Are we willing to be the ones who stop, who help, and who show radical mercy to those in need, no matter who they are? Part 5. Jesus' command, go and do likewise. Now, we come to the heart of the parable, the moment where Jesus brings everything together and challenges us with a command that resonates through the ages. Go and do likewise. This is the moment where Jesus takes the story he's just told and turns it directly onto the listener, the lawyer, and by extension, all of us. After revealing the radical mercy of the Samaritan, he doesn't just leave us with a warm feeling. He gives us a clear call to action. He says, go and do likewise. At this point, we can almost hear Jesus' words echoing through time. He's not just telling the lawyer to admire the Samaritan's actions or to agree with the principles of love and mercy. He's telling him, and all of us, that this isn't just a story to reflect on, It's a story to live out. The challenge is clear. Go and do likewise. Live out the same mercy, the same love, the same compassion that the Samaritan showed. Jesus is commanding us to put his teachings into practice, to embody the love we've just witnessed, and to become the neighbor who shows mercy to anyone in need, regardless of who they are or where they come from. Think about what that really means. Jesus isn't telling us to just admire the Good Samaritan from a distance. He's calling us to become like him. This is a challenge that goes beyond simply doing good deeds when it's convenient or when we feel like it. It's a call to be radically merciful, to actively seek out ways to help those who are suffering, to stop when others walk by, and to love in ways that make a difference in the lives of those around us. It's a call to put love into action, to go beyond feeling compassion and to translate that feeling into concrete acts of kindness and mercy. But here's the thing. When Jesus says, "Go and do likewise," he isn't offering us an easy path. He's asking us to live in a way that challenges everything the world teaches us. In a world where division, fear, and self-interest often rule, Jesus is calling us to be different. He's calling us to break down the walls that separate us from others, to extend mercy even to those who we may not agree with, and to show love even when it's uncomfortable or costly. It's about stepping out of our comfort zones, just like the Samaritan did, and showing up for people who need us, no matter who they are or what they believe. This command is a radical one. It asks us to love in ways that often don't make sense according to the world's standards. The world tells us to look out for number one, to protect ourselves, and to only give when we get something in return. But Jesus says, no, love like the Samaritan. Love without expecting anything in return. Love the ones who are hard to love. Love the ones society says you don't have to care about. This kind of love goes beyond what is easy or expected. It's the kind of love that transforms lives and communities. So, let me ask you, how are you living out this command in your life? Are you actively looking for ways to show mercy and kindness to those around you? Are there people in your life, maybe people you don't even know well or people you might not naturally get along with, who need your love and care? Are you ready to stop, to reach out, and to help? Jesus' call isn't just for us to nod in agreement. It's a call to action. I want you to think about the places in your life where God is asking you to show mercy. Maybe it's in your workplace, where there's someone who is overlooked or mistreated. Maybe it's in your community, where you see people struggling and in need of support. Maybe it's in your family or among your friends, where there's tension and the call to love seems especially difficult. Wherever it is, Jesus is saying, go and do likewise. He's not asking us to wait for the perfect moment or for the right conditions. He's asking us to act now, to love now, to show mercy now. The beauty of this command is that it's not about being perfect. It's about being willing. It's about choosing to follow Jesus' example of radical love and mercy, even when it's hard. When we go and do likewise, we are reflecting the very heart of God, who saw us in our brokenness, in our need, and chose to reach out to us in love. God's mercy towards us wasn't dependent on our worth or our ability to repay him. It was freely given. And now he asks us to do the same for others. So, as we reflect on this powerful command, let's ask ourselves, how can we go and do likewise? How can we live out this call to love and mercy in our everyday lives? It may not always be easy, but remember, when we step out and live this way, we are not only following Jesus' example, we are becoming his hands and feet in a world that desperately needs his love. Let's go and do likewise, not just in our hearts, but in our actions. Part 6. Jesus' command, go and do likewise. As we dig deeper into Jesus' command, go and do likewise, let's take a moment to really understand the weight of these words. Jesus isn't asking for a simple acknowledgement or an occasional good deed here. When he says, go and do likewise, He's calling us to a lifestyle, a radical shift in how we view and interact with the world around us. This is an invitation to take the mercy, love, and compassion we've seen demonstrated in the parable and make it our daily practice. It's not about trying to be good when we feel like it. It's about making the choice to live out God's love in action, day after day. This command wasn't just for the lawyer or for the people standing there listening. It's for all of us. Jesus is speaking directly to us, saying, "You've heard the story. Now go out and do the same." It's one thing to listen to a story about love and mercy, and it's another thing entirely to live it out. The lawyer could nod and agree with the parable, but Jesus isn't interested in passive agreement. He's challenging us to actively engage with the world the way the Samaritan did, by showing mercy to those who need it most, even when they least expect it and when it costs us something. The question we need to ask ourselves is, are we ready to be like the Good Samaritan? Are we ready to stop when everyone else walks by, to love when it feels inconvenient, and to show mercy when the world tells us we don't have to? When Jesus says, "Go and do likewise," He's inviting us into a life that's full of purpose and full of action. It's about living out our faith in a way that has a tangible impact on those around us. Jesus wants us to actively love, not just in words, but in deeds. It's about seeing the needs around us and choosing to respond in love and kindness, even if it means stepping out of our comfort zone. I want you to think about your own life right now. Are there people in your life who need your mercy? Are there situations where God is calling you to show love to someone who might not deserve it? Someone who might be considered an outsider or even an enemy? Maybe it's someone at work who's difficult to get along with. Maybe it's a stranger you pass by every day who seems invisible. Maybe it's a friend or family member who is going through a tough time, and you feel like you don't have the time or the energy to help. Jesus is calling us to stop, to take the time, and to be the hands and feet of His mercy. Let's be honest, this kind of love isn't always easy. It's easier to stay in our bubbles, to only reach out to the people we know and love, to avoid the messiness of real-life situations. But Jesus never promised us that living out His commands would be easy. What He promises is that when we choose to live in love and mercy, we reflect His heart to a hurting world. And that's where true transformation happens. Go and do likewise doesn't just mean we help out when it's convenient. It means we step into the lives of others, even when it requires sacrifice. The Samaritan didn't just throw a few coins at the problem. He took the man to an inn, made sure he was cared for, and promised to cover any additional costs. This wasn't just a casual act of kindness. It was a deep, sacrificial act of love. And that's the kind of love Jesus is calling us to live. The beauty of this command is that it's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about being willing to take that first step, to act when the opportunity arises, and to keep our eyes open for moments when we can show mercy. It's about being intentional with how we live and choosing to see the people around us the way God sees them, not as problems or burdens, but as individuals worthy of love and care. When we go and do likewise, we are embodying the very essence of Christ's love for the world. So, how do we live this out practically? It can start small. Maybe it's offering a kind word to someone who's struggling, or maybe it's reaching out to a friend who's going through a tough time. It could be standing up for someone who's being mistreated or offering help to someone in need without expecting anything in return. It's about being present in the moment, being aware of the needs around us, and choosing to respond with compassion. And as we do, we'll start to see how our actions can make a difference, not only in the lives of those we help, but also in our own hearts. Jesus' command, "Go and do likewise," is an invitation to a life of radical love. It's a call to go beyond the status quo, to look beyond the surface, and to step into the lives of others with the same mercy and love that Jesus shows us every day. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. As you go about your day, I challenge you to ask yourself, How can I go and do likewise today? How can I show mercy and love to those around me, just as the Good Samaritan did? The world is waiting for us to step up, to show mercy, and to change lives with the love of Christ. Let's go and do likewise. Conclusion. Embracing mercy and justice. As we wrap up our journey through the parable of the Good Samaritan, we arrive at a powerful conclusion that ties together everything Jesus has been teaching us. The intersection of mercy and justice. The command to go and do likewise is more than just a call to show kindness. It's a call to embrace both mercy and justice in a way that transforms not only the world around us but also our own hearts. Jesus' story challenges us to reflect on how we engage with the brokenness of the world. We live in a world filled with division, injustice, and inequality. Whether it's people struggling financially, facing discrimination, or simply feeling invisible, there are countless individuals who need mercy. The question is, how do we respond? Do we walk by like the priest and the Levite, or do we stop like the Samaritan and act with compassion? Mercy and justice are not separate concepts in the kingdom of God. They are intertwined, each one fueling the other. Justice is about ensuring fairness and equality, while mercy is about showing love and compassion, even when people don't deserve it. The Samaritan didn't just offer justice by stopping and helping. The real act of justice here was that he treated the wounded man as a person worthy of dignity and care. He righted the wrong done to him by bandaging his wounds and ensuring he had what he needed to recover. In showing mercy, the Samaritan demonstrated true justice. He sought to restore what was broken. Now let's pause for a moment. Mercy is sometimes hard to show, especially when we think people don't deserve it. But mercy isn't about whether someone deserves help. It's about seeing the inherent value in every person. Mercy is about choosing to love when the world says we don't have to. It's about stepping into the messiness of life and showing up for others, even when it's uncomfortable. And in doing so, we're not just showing love, we're making the world more just. Jesus' command to go and do likewise isn't just about showing mercy to those we like or those who are easy to love. It's about showing mercy to the oppressed, the marginalized, and even those who might seem like enemies. The kingdom of God flips the script. Just as the Samaritan showed mercy to the man who would have been his enemy, we too are called to love and serve those we might find hardest to love. This is how justice and mercy work together to break down the barriers that divide us. Think about the people in your own life who might need your mercy. Is there someone who is struggling, who feels like they've been left by the side of the road, abandoned and forgotten? Is there someone who needs justice and mercy to restore their dignity and their hope? Maybe it's a friend, a family member, or even someone you pass by every day. Just like the Samaritan, you have the opportunity to stop, to show mercy, and to be the hands of justice in their lives. The beauty of this message is that when we show mercy, we are not just helping someone else, we are also being transformed. As we go out and live out this call to action, we start to embody the heart of God. We become more like Jesus, who didn't just tell us to love others but showed us how to do it through his life and his sacrifice. Mercy and justice become the defining marks of who we are as Christians, reflecting God's love in a broken world. So, I challenge you today to embrace both mercy and justice in your life. Look for the opportunities where you can show compassion, where you can bring healing and hope to those around you. Don't just talk about love. Live it. Don't just acknowledge injustice. Act on it. Jesus calls us to be the change we want to see in the world, to love others as he loves us, and to make mercy and justice the foundations of our actions. As we go forward, let's remember that showing mercy doesn't just change others. It changes us. It transforms our hearts, shapes our character, and draws us closer to the heart of God. And as we live out Jesus' command to go and do likewise, we become agents of change, bringing mercy and justice to a world that desperately needs both. Let's commit to living out these powerful truths today, because when we do, we not only reflect God's love, but we also become part of His work to make the world whole again.